In a town where the moon shone bright and clear, lived young Layla with Ramadan cheer. She loved the nights so lively and grand, with laughter and joy hand in hand. But oh, one night, a problem did rise. The town's big feast under starry skies was missing a dish. Oh, so dear, the famous rice pudding wasn't here. Layla thought fast, with a twinkle in her eye. I'll make the pudding, I'll surely try. She mixed and she stirred, with a giggle and a dance, giving the town's feast a second chance. With a sprinkle of rosewater, fragrant and light, Layla added a touch of pure delight. The aroma so sweet it filled the night air, enhancing the with love and care. The children around her, they all lent a hand, stirring the mixture, a joyful band. Each one brought laughter, their faces so bright, as they helped create a magical night. With a final touch they all gathered around, chopped pistachios on top they found, a garnish so lovely, a vibrant green hue, adding beauty and flavor, the perfect view. As they served the dessert, with a grateful heart, the town came together, never to part. For Layla's rice pudding, a sweet work of art, brought unity and joy, a fresh loving start. In that moonlit night, Layla found her way to bring joy and sharing in her own special way. For Ramadan's magic, she came to see, is in the love we share, so pure and free. And every year, under the moon's gentle glow, Layla's pudding is the star of the show. In a town where the moon shines bright and clear, Layla's joy spreads, bringing everyone near.
At night, something unusual was happening in the city. A group of children were preparing for a tough mission. They were going to take the animals in the zoo away to their natural habitats. Everything was ready, including the vehicles for carrying the animals, the plane tickets, and the vets who would accompany them to their respective countries. The excitement began. They loaded all the animals into the vehicles. But the Africa crew had an unexpected guest, Barney, the dog that slept by the zoo gates. Thinking he was one of the animals from the zoo, the children picked him up and loaded him onto the truck. Barney was in such a deep sleep that he didn't even notice what was happening. Barney woke up feeling extremely hot. He was in a totally unfamiliar natural world with animals he had never seen before. Barney jumped so high in his alarm, you'd have been amazed if you'd seen him. Not knowing what to do next, he stopped a spider that was scuttling around and asked where he was. He was in Africa. Unbelievable! Do I have superpowers or what? How did I get here? He wondered. While Barney was wondering how he could get home, he saw a group of tourists out on safari. The tourists were looking around excitedly through their binoculars. Unbelievable! Truly unbelievable! Cried one of them. Everyone in the vehicle looked to where he was pointing and saw something extraordinary. The tour guide knew immediately that Barney didn't belong there. They all called out to him. Here, boy! Here, boy! Come here, boy! Hearing this, Barney ran so fast, he almost took flight. The tourists took hot and sweaty Barney to their vehicle and quickly gave him some water. A woman gave him her hat, and a child gave him some sunglasses to protect him from the heat. He spent the whole day with them. Then they put him on a plane to take him home. Barney was happy to be back home, but he also felt different after his adventure. His friends barely recognized Barney when they saw him. Boney asked, Barney, do you realize you're wearing the hat and sunglasses? Barney swiftly replied, When I was in Africa, we all went around like this. You wouldn't know, of course. These are necessary on safari. They protect you from the sun. But something else had changed about Barney. The way he spoke had changed. He now started every sentence with, "Ahem, when I was in Africa." His friends desperately wanted the old Barney back. Would this ever happen? As darkness fell and humans started retreating into their homes, dogs gradually started coming out to protect the streets and gardens. Barney and his friends were in charge of protecting one particular garden. Would Barney succeed in scaring off animals like the hogs and foxes that tried to enter the garden by clearing his throat and saying, "Ahem"? The inevitable happened, of course. A hog came into the garden and immediately started eating the strawberries. Barney's friends sent him to deal with the situation. Barney started barking, or rather clearing his throat. "Ahem, ahem, ahem, ahem." The hog turned towards where the noise was coming from and burst out laughing. The hog laughed and laughed. He laughed so much that he almost choked on the strawberries he'd stuffed into his mouth. He just couldn't stop laughing. The hog fled out of the garden before all the strawberries dropped out of his mouth. Barney's friends, who had been watching from behind a tree, were shocked. They went over to Barney and gave him a big hug. "Barney, you stay as Barney of Africa for as long as you like. Even though you didn't scare the hog, you certainly made him leave," they said. Barney was very happy to hear this. His friends accepted him for who he was. And so he started a new story. Ahem! When I was in Africa.
Igor the frog was very unhappy. Why? Because for a long time now, he hadn't been able to touch water. It was a terrible, really terrible thing for a little frog not to be able to go in the water. Meanwhile, all his friends played water polo in the mornings, did water gymnastics to relax before their afternoon nap, did ballet in the Red River as the sun went down, and organized swimming races at the weekends. Igor used to play with them from morning until night in the old days. But now he couldn't touch even a drop of water. When he woke up in the morning, he couldn't even wash his face, so he had to wipe his gummy eyes with his fingers. That's disgusting. He wouldn't wash when he got home in the evening either, so he had to wipe his hands and face clean with a towel. That's disgusting too. Igor wouldn't even have a bath, and that's even more disgusting. All day long, he would wander by himself across the water lilies, in between the reeds, and at the base of the rocks, dragging dirt behind him. He was so bored. Whenever he decided to touch the water, he would hear that voice at his shoulder. Never touch the water, never touch the water. This is what you must always remember. This was Igor's fear. The days went by and by and by, and the fear talked and talked and talked. And because he couldn't touch water, Igor got dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. The more Igor listened to fear, so fear grew bigger and bigger and bigger. His fear grew so big that Igor became tired carrying it around on his small shoulders. He missed playing with his friends. He missed swimming for hours and hours in the river. He missed smelling fresh and clean. He missed being happy. But his fear kept singing the same irritating song into his ear. Never touch the water. Never touch the water. This is what you must always remember. One day, when his friends were playing in the river as usual, Igor was so sick of hiding that he went over to them. He was just about to open his mouth and say, "Here I am," when the frog started to jump away from him, croaking, "Ribbit, ribbit." They hadn't recognized him and thought he was a monster. Igor was now so dirty that he was unrecognizable, and he had his huge fear sitting on his shoulder. He looked like a monster, and he smelled like a monster. This made Igor so sad. He thought and thought and thought. It had all begun on the day of the race. Igor had held his breath and dived to the bottom to swim underwater, hoping he'd go faster. Just as he was about to reach the finish line, he became dizzy, lost his balance, swallowed a lot of water, and ran out of breath. He quickly clambered out onto the riverbank. It was at exactly that moment that this fear had appeared at his shoulder. Since that day, he was terrified that even one drop of water would be enough to drown him. He didn't want to go anywhere near water anymore. The more Igor listened to his fear, the more he became anxious about what might happen in the future because of something bad that happened in the past. And so, he missed all the games and fun things that happened in the present. So long as he continued to listen to his fear, he would always remain dirty, alone, and unhappy. So, what if he didn't listen to his fear? Right then, his fear jumped up and started to sing, "Never touch the water, never touch the water. This is what you must always remember." His fear danced and jumped up and down on his shoulders, singing. It weighed Igor down and down and down. Then, suddenly, plucking up every bit of courage, he said, "I'm not listening to you." The moment he said this, his fear suddenly shrank. "Crikey," said Igor. He stretched himself out a bit. His fear was still stuck to him, but his shoulders were a little more comfortable. Although his fear was smaller now, it was still whispering its song. "Never touch the water, never touch the water. This is what you must always remember." But Igor had decided he wasn't going to listen to it. He wanted to go in the water again, be nice and clean, play with his friends, and join in all the fun. Up to the river he crept and crept and crept. Slowly he touched the water, and his fear grew smaller again, but it was still whispering urgently in his ear. Never touch the water, never touch the water. This is what you must always remember. But Igor didn't listen to it. He pinched his nose with one hand and closed his eyes with the other. That's all in the past, he said, and jumped in the water. For the first few seconds, he was very anxious. But then his whole body relaxed. How lovely it was to swim! After enjoying the water for a while, Igor ran home. Straight away, he filled his bathtub. He poured some lovely smelling bubble bath into the water and spent a long, long time bathing. After his bath, he hopped back to the river. His friend said, Igor, where have you been? Come on, let's do some water ballet as the sun goes down. I'm coming, said a happy Igor and jumped into the water. And in the future, Igor is on a mountain hike. Igor is climbing trees. Igor meets a dog. Ideas for You, written by Eylül Şanyurek Altiş, illustrated by Ulya Erdiş Çekaroğlu. In the old days, almost everyone had their own ideas. Of course, there were those who didn't have any ideas at all, or who were a bit confused. When this happened, people would talk with one another and share ideas. Or they would come up with new ideas altogether. One day, a tiny store with very big plans opened. It had a very strange name, Ideas for You. How could you buy an idea? I'll have a unique, one-of-a-kind idea, please. Excuse me, could you give me an idea? What's the use-by date on this idea, please? People passing by the store were so flummoxed by the name that they would go inside to see what it was all about. At first, only the really curious went in. And then, they told other people about it, so they dropped by too. It wasn't long before the number of visitors increased. Anyone who needed an idea, instead of talking to someone about it, would come to Ideas for You. Soon, lines of people were snaking around the building. We don't know about those waiting in line, but those coming out sure had a big smile on their face. Sometime later, things started to go a bit wrong. So what happened exactly? Well, soon everyone started to look the same as everyone else. Some thought Ideas for You had something to do with it, so they made a beeline for the store. Hello, how can I help? I bought an idea from you the other day, and would you believe it? Turns out everyone else has the exact same idea. Can I return it, please? How can you return an idea? We do not accept returns. Please ask about our exchange policy. Some thought the problem was with other people. They drifted further apart from one another. Some stopped to think and ask themselves, why exactly are we going to Ideas for You? This question soon spread and spread, and that's when things started to change. Some people started to try to come up with their own ideas. Some were successful, some weren't. But everyone remembered the value of certain things.
Living in a big city full of people, especially if you are a mouse. I'm Inky. I'm a small mouse that lives in a big city. There are things I have to watch out for as a city dweller mouse. Most importantly, I mustn't get trampled on. There's a strange blue glow on people's faces when they walk around. I don't know what that glow is, but it certainly prevents them from seeing where they're going. It's not enough knowing the location of restaurants to ensure that I don't go hungry. I also need to know when they will put food outside. I don't understand why they cook all this food that doesn't get eaten. If it were me, I'd share it with people who need it. I also need to know where all the potholes are so that I don't fall down one in the dark, which isn't easy. A new hole appears every day. Humans must be searching for very important things underground. Sometimes they put furniture outside. When that happens, I immediately run over to have a comfy nap. Beep, beep, beep. Whenever I'm about to doze off, that noise starts. Humans have such strange tastes. I think they enjoy loud noise. I prefer silence when I want to rest. Occasionally, I see a lonely balloon. I want to run up to it and find out which crowd it is escaping from. Beep! But it's not easy moving from one place to another in a big city, especially if you're a mouse. Sometimes I see humans who are unhappy. I go up to them hoping to make them smile. Ah, a mouse! But I've not yet managed that. I love them all the same, especially couples. Life is more beautiful with someone you can hold hands with. And the little ones, they are full of excitement for life. And those that move around slowly, they approach life with wisdom. The ones that go out with their friends. And those who cover their ears with strange things. Sometimes I too cover my ears with my paws to enjoy the song I'm singing in my head. It's not really so hard to live in a big city when it's full of people you love. In fact, it's quite fun. I realize this most when night falls and the city is silent. Then at dawn, I wake up excited at the thought of spending another day in this big city with my family, friends, and millions of other living creatures. Moonlight shone over the sea, and the boats tied up at the seashore gently swayed with the waves. Fish that were sleepy had withdrawn into the sand, but others that had not yet tired of swimming were still cruising around between the boats, passing between their mooring ropes as if playing a game. For a while, Little Boat watched them swimming and playing their little games. Their fearlessness as they roamed the bottom of the sea and their agility as they moved between the mooring ropes made him inexplicably sad. At sunrise, all the other boats would set out for the open sea, swimming as freely as the fish, while Little Boat would remain tied up on the shore. The others found it difficult to comprehend why, since he was a boat, Little Boat had a fear of swimming. They would try to entice him out into open waters, but after countless attempts, they eventually realized that they were merely scaring Little Boat even more and decided to leave him alone. Since then, Little Boat had remained moored on the shore. However, don't be fooled by the fact that Little Boat had never swum. He still knew many things about the sea. His boat friends that went daily out to sea would return in the evening and exchange lots of stories about what they had seen that day. Little Boat would listen to them eagerly. For instance, Little Boat had never seen dolphins, but he knew all about them as if he saw them every day. He had listened to countless stories of how dolphins dive and then leap out of the water to salute passing boats. When his friends returned in the evening, Little Boat would ask each of them if they had seen any dolphins that day. To those who had, he would excitedly ask, "Did they salute you?" "Of course," his friends would reply. "Dolphins always salute us. They love boats." For some reason, this reply always made Little Boat happy. So they must love me as well, he thought. After all, he was also a boat. His fear of swimming made no difference to that. His friends had finished their adventures for the day and were now feeling tired. One by one, all the boats fell asleep. Little Boat checked his mooring one last time before going to sleep. The rope was tied fast. He gave a big sigh and fell into a deep sleep. The moon gradually faded, and the sun began to rise. Sunlight was beginning to warm the surface of the sea, and little fish were celebrating the new day by leaping out of the water. With deft movements, the fishermen untangled the mooring ropes of the boats. Everything was ready for the new day. One by one, the boats set out for the open sea, and Little Boat settled down to another day of being alone. He would spend it waiting for evening, when his friends would return. He was already bored. Let's just hope they aren't too late coming back, he thought, when suddenly the sky turned very dark. Time can't have passed as quickly as that, he exclaimed, turning to look for the sun. But it was hidden by black clouds that now covered the sky. There was a flash of lightning, followed by a loud clap of thunder. His friends, who had only just set out to sea, returned one by one. It was clearly going to be a stormy day. The boats never went out in a storm. Little Boat was the only one to be pleased about this storm. At least I can spend the day with my friends, he thought. The boats were all tightly moored to the shore. The wind was getting stronger and the sea was becoming rough. A giant wave reared up and hurtled towards them. "Hold tight," yelled one of the boats. The wave crashed down on them, then carried the boats up as it swelled again. The wave, which was so powerful that even crashing into the boats hadn't slowed its progress, continued towards the beach, where it managed to unravel the knots of some of the mooring ropes. One of these unraveled ropes belonged to Little Boat, who, not realizing what had happened, found he was being carried out to sea. He called out anxiously to his friends, but his voice was lost in the wind, and not one of them heard him. Little Boat continued to drift swiftly out to sea. He was so scared. He didn't know what to do, so he closed his eyes and just hoped it was a nightmare. Little Boat had no idea how long this went on, but when he opened his eyes, he saw the sun was shining. The black clouds had dispersed. The wind had subsided and the sea had calmed. He looked around for his friends, but couldn't see them. He realized that he must be a long way from the shore. Being so far away and totally alone made him feel anxious again. He was just about to close his eyes in fear when he saw them. Smiling dolphins were diving in and out of the water. They circled around Little Boat and seemed to be singing to him. For a moment, Little Boat forgot that he was out at sea far away from his friends. He watched in wonder as he was saluted by the dolphins, who started swimming alongside him, escorting him to the shore. Little Boat played games with the dolphins as he swam with them. When they had almost reached the shore, the dolphins said goodbye to Little Boat, who continued swimming to where his friends were moored. The sun set and the moon rose high in the sky. It was time for the boats to start chatting. This time, Little Boat also had adventures to tell to his friends. Little Boat talked at length in the moonlight, savoring every moment. He spoke about how he had been carried away in the storm, been lost at sea, and, just as he was losing hope, how the dolphins had brought him back to shore. His friends listened to him eagerly. That night, Little Boat was the first to settle down to sleep, not because he was tired, but because he couldn't wait for the morning to come. I want morning to come so that we can go out to sea, play in the waves, and swim with the dolphins, he thought. The next day, Little Boat went out to sea with his friends. Every night after that, he could hardly wait for morning to come so that he could go swimming again.
Old railroad car. I've gotten a bit rusty, and I'm no longer attached to my train. In the old days, when I was with my train, I saw lots of beautiful scenery at different times of the year. When I remember those days, I feel glad that I came into this world as a railroad car. We transported passengers, accompanied by their dreams, from one end of the country to the other. People waved at us, and we whistled back to them as we happily set off beneath blue skies on those exciting train journeys. I felt happy to be uniting my passengers with their loved ones as we sped like a bird along the railroads. Some people leaned against my windows and shared their troubles with me. They were leaving their hometowns behind and had entrusted me with all their baggage. Whenever we stopped for a break, I would discuss the journey with the other cars. Each of us had stories to tell about the dreams of our passengers. I'm old now. Aging isn't important, but I'm a bit tired. My railroad car friends, our locomotive, and our conductor were all very sad when I was detached from my big train. I was glad they would go on to see new places, but I did feel a bit lonely. However, that was only until something wonderful happened that made me feel complete again. I was left on an empty piece of land. I waved goodbye to my big train as it set off, and it whistled back to me. At that moment, I felt a sudden panic. I was afraid that I would never again carry any dreams inside me. Railroad cars are part of something bigger. They can't do anything on their own. At the time, I had no idea what it meant to have to look after yourself. One day, while I was thinking that I was going to get even rustier if I didn't move anywhere, a small, bright-eyed dog came up to me. He sniffed around and wagged his tail eagerly. Then he came inside, curled up in a corner, and fell asleep. I too slept, feeling very content and happy to have found a new friend. Everything changed very quickly after that. I was hardly ever alone. A girl with tousled hair and kind hands turned up, and after her came lots of cats and dogs. She made a little house with separate rooms out of me. I now have different sections. Before, I had been a part of something bigger. Now, I'm on my own, but divided into several parts. I keep the animals warm, and they do the same for me. The girl with the tousled hair comes every day without fail. Sometimes she brings a vet with her, and they treat any animals that are sick. Other times, I feel her leaning against my wall, dreaming. Our dreams merge and are reflected in the hopeful gaze of the animals living in our little home. And these dreams settle in the corners of our minds, where the skies are blue and there are long journeys ahead. I've learned that staying behind can sometimes be just as wonderful as going away. I'm grateful to my big train, and I'm very happy with my new little home.
World Day. Written by Eylül Şanyürük Altış. A day was just a day. For example, May 7th was just that, May 7th. It was no different from September 16th. or July 5th. We don't know how it happened, but some days started to become more important than others. Then, in time, people started to celebrate these days. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Teacher's Day, and so on. Everywhere around the world, special days were being added to the calendar. Think a mail carrier day, old furniture day, flower planting day, middle child day, buy nothing day, black cat day, gravity day. Gradually, everything started to have its own day. Even the earth was given its own day. Well, everything else had a day. Why shouldn't the earth? Soon, days started to get all mixed up. Hooray! It's popcorn day today. What? But isn't it learn a new word day? No, come on. Everyone knows it's tell a joke day today. And then the days started to clash with each other. One day, sing at the top of your lungs day clashed with be quiet day. How were people meant to sing a song and be quiet at the same time? It wasn't long until a last-minute development spread across the world. Newsflash! Experts have warned that all 365 days are about to be officially full. If necessary precautions aren't taken, there will be no free day left in the year without a celebration. Almost all 365 days were about to be full. There were disagreements about the few remaining empty days. There were still so many things that deserved their own special day. People from all corners of the world came together to find a solution. Couldn't we just add a few extra days to the year? But this wasn't possible. There must be a way to create more days in the year. But there was no way to increase the number of days. They thought, and they scratched their heads. They pondered the matter with each other and asked each other questions. This was the hot topic in even the most distant parts of the globe. But still, no one could come up with a solution. Then one day, a child on a completely ordinary day, in a completely ordinary way, dropped an eraser on the floor. If only there was a world day, he said to himself. Of course, this was exactly what people were looking for. Maybe this new day could solve all the problems. Could it? What do you think this day is?